Good morning and welcome to Sunday School at Second Baptist Church in Waycross. I'm glad you could join me this morning. We're continuing in the book of Proverbs, and we were in chapter 3 last week, and we're continuing in chapter 3 again today. The title of our lesson this week is Compassion Demonstrated. And so you can get the idea that we're going to talk about having compassion for other people. And one of the things that we're going to see during the study through these verses is that the result of wisdom or of wise choices is a joyful and peaceful life. Not always joyful and not always peaceful, but a more joyful and more peaceful life when we make those wise choices, the choices that God would have us to make. Because it says here, a quote from the book says, true wisdom is grounded in the person and character of God. So in other words, if to make a really wise choice, we've made a choice that is in line with the character of God and the attributes that we see that God has, which is much more important than our own personality or putting our own spin on it. So let's go ahead and get started by reading. Our book picks up on verse 21, and we're going to begin to read there. I'm going to read verses 21 to 26 to start off. So this is Proverbs chapter 3, verses 21 to 26. My son, let them not vanish from your sight. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So that verse, I'll just stop there and say, it's kind of a reversal. You might say it this way: keep sound wisdom and discretion. My son, let them not vanish from your sight. It's like that. So they will be life to your soul and adornment to your neck. Then you will walk in your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden fear, nor of the onslaught of the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence, and will keep your foot from being caught. So let's break that down, that first section there, and see some of the things that it says. First of all, it says that to keep wisdom and let me get back to it. Keep sound wisdom and discretion in your sight. In other words, keep your eye on those things and don't let them disappear from your thinking or from your sight. And sound wisdom, as I said, is the wisdom of God, the wisdom that God gives us. And then it says discretion. And discretion is included with wisdom, but it's a little bit different, because to me, the way I think of discretion is that you have the ability or self-control to leave something unsaid, even though you wish you could say it. And I think that is really important in our world today. We all have an opinion about things, but we don't all have to constantly give our opinion. Our opinion should be reserved for the times when it's going to help make matters better, instead of making matters worse. And if we could all think about it in that way, it's not necessary that we all give our opinion. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then it says, if you can keep those things in your view, they will be life to your soul and adornment to your neck. And that phrase, life to your soul, it really speaks to me, that if you're making wise choices, it makes you live in a good way. Your life has meaning then. You begin to have substance and life in your soul because you're making those good choices. And then it goes on in the next part to say you'll lie down and not be afraid. Your sleep will be sweet. You'll have peace of mind. And when you lie down at night to go to sleep, you'll know that you've made the choices through the day in the best way that you could do that, and you can sleep peacefully. You won't sleep in fear. You won't sleep restlessly because you're afraid, and you also won't have these things troubling you where you made wrong choices. And we all make wrong choices. I mean, no doubt about it. You're just not going to get everything right. It happens that way. But we're doing the best we can, and by God's grace, we are making the choices that God would want us to make, the majority of the time. Then that's going to impact our life in every way, in the way we sleep, and the feelings that we have of fear and other things in the daytime. Now it says, do not be afraid of sudden fear, nor of the onslaught of the wicked when it comes. And there where it says onslaught, my Bible also interprets that to say the storm of the wicked. So in other words, it's saying when something bad does happen, a sudden fear, or a storm brought on by a wicked person, then we can weather that storm because of the wisdom of God that we have in our life. And it says, don't be afraid when those things happen, for the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. So the Lord is with us through all of those things. He is our confidence. We don't have confidence on our own, but He's with us. He gives us our confidence. He's beside us. We're not going through the troubles of life all by ourselves. We have Him with us to guide us, to protect us, to help us to make a decision when a decision needs to be made. Fear is a crippling thing. When a sudden fear comes on you and you feel like, oh, wow, I'm about to lose it all, lose all my money, or, something like that. That fear is crippling. And, it can cause us to not remember that God is there with us and that He's going to see us through the storm and the difficult time of life. Let's go on now and let's read 27 to 30 and see what that says. Now, to me, starting from here is where the Proverbs, up until now, it's kind of been giving us the value of having wisdom and the benefits of having wisdom and those kind of things. It affects our lives, and I think we understand that to be a wise person, and godly wisdom affects our lives. But now it begins with, I guess, to kind of transition over to instructions and ways that we should actually live, and things that we should actually do to help us to be wise people. And so let's read verse 27 to 30. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come back, and tomorrow I will give it, when you have it with you. Do not devise harm against your neighbor while he lives securely beside you. Do not contend with a man without cause, if he has done you no harm. Okay, so all of these things that it's talking about are ways that we treat other people. first of all, it says don't withhold good from someone that it's due. So it's not enough just to not do bad to people, but also don't be a person that withholds something good from someone. When it is in your power to do something good for that person. It says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. In other words, if you know that a person is owed something, or they have done an exemplary job, and you should be giving them some encouragement or some praise or a thank you, but you don't do that, then that sort of falls into this category of withholding good from someone when it is in your power to do something about it. There's a phrase, and I should have thought about this before now, but there's a phrase that says, a kindness delayed becomes an offense. It's something like that. So in other words, if you should be doing a good thing, a good deed, a thank you, helping someone, and you delay that much longer than you should have done, then it can be seen as an offense when you finally do get around to doing it. Okay, and then next it says, don't say to your neighbor, go and come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you. So that has to do with being patient with people and going ahead and helping them now. If you have it with you, it says, go ahead and help the person. Don't put them off and make them come back and continue to beg from you. Because that's kind of you holding power over them to make them have to beg you for the thing that they need help with. And so when possible, go ahead and help that person. Do not devise harm against your neighbor while he lives securely beside you. That there's a couple of different interpretations for that word securely. One interpretation says he trusts you and lives near you. So your neighbor is living with confidence beside you, and so it says don't devise harm against your neighbor who has trusted you enough that he lives alongside of you. And of course that makes sense that we should not devise harm against our neighbor. We should not do something that we know will offend or cause a problem for our neighbor. And it says do not contend with a man without cause if he has done you no harm. Again, this is sort of like picking at someone, contending with them, trying to argue with them when they've not done anything wrong to you. So all of these things in this group are attitudes that we might have toward another person, our neighbor. It brings to mind the parable of the Good Samaritan, where the Good Samaritan, they asked Jesus, who is your neighbor? And he told that story of the ones who treated the man this way or that way, and then the Good Samaritan who took care of the man. So doing things against your neighbor might be gossip, even slander. It could also be bringing a lawsuit against your neighbor for something that you could work out between you without that. A true neighbor, in the story of the Good Samaritan, and in general, I would say, a true neighbor elevates the other person. They want to see the other person succeed, and they want the other person to have the best chance in life. It doesn't mean that you're giving away everything that you have so that your neighbors succeed. It's not that. but it's that you look at your neighbor not as a competition, but as a person that if you can elevate your neighbor in that way, you also are elevated, because as we all, rise together, we support each other. And this is true in your actual neighborhood, where you might help your neighbor when you know that they are sick or something like that. But it's also in our community and our nation, when we work together, when we can figure out how to cooperate together and lift each other up and encourage each other. Okay, now let's continue on with verse 31 to 35. I'll read those verses. Do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways, for the devious are an abomination to the Lord, but he is intimate with the upright. The curse of the Lord is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the dwelling of the righteous. Though he scoffs at the scoffers, yet he gives grace to the afflicted. The wise will inherit honor, but fools display dishonor. Okay, so each one of these verses has a sort of a two sides to it. The curse of the Lord is on the house of the wicked. He blesses the dwelling of the righteous. And we talked about this last week, that God blesses his people. He blesses the home of the righteous. Those who are trying to do right, those who know God and are trying their best to serve him, yes, he blesses them. And there's no doubt about it. We see it in many ways. And it says at the beginning of this little section that I just read, do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways. In our world today, the world tends to look up to someone who is powerful and gets their way. Sometimes the bully is looked up to as, wow, he takes care of business. He gets it done, In the business world, you see people who are harsh with each other, who treat others in a sort of a bullying way. And, if you bring it up or you talk about it, then someone always says, oh, that's just business. And, I'm in business as a real estate agent, and I just disagree. I do. I disagree with that. Because I feel like when somebody says that's just business, that's an excuse for bad behavior in my eyes, and I don't respect it. So the Bible is telling us here, don't envy a man of violence. Don't envy someone who goes around either being violent or harsh. I'm gonna substitute harshness there, because violent speech or violent actions both go along the same line. And don't choose any of his ways. It says the devious are an abomination to the Lord. And I had written down, let me see, I think I turned the page. Here we go. What is a devious person? A devious person is someone that you might look at them and say, oh, they got the best of him. They were clever. They tricked. They did that in a way that was so cool. They ended up not paying any taxes on that because they were so cool. All those things fall into a category of being a trickster or being devious. And it says the devious are an abomination to the Lord. That's pretty strong language. He does not like that kind of character. He doesn't want us to have that kind of character where we have beat somebody out of something. I'm using some slang expressions today for sure, but you know what I mean. where we have gotten the best of someone, or we've tricked someone even, in the dealings that we did with them. That is an abomination to the Lord, and we need to be sure and remember that. And it says, but the Lord is intimate with the upright. He is going to bless the house of the righteous. And then we get down to the scoffers. I enjoyed this part. Solomon talks about honor, and he talks about the wise who will inherit honor, and fools will display or raise high dishonor. So this idea of honor, where someone wants to be honored or they want to be respected. And I think, almost everyone would like to be honored or respected. I think that's built within us, that we want to feel that way. And I think sometimes people think that they can gain honor maybe by doing some of these things, like being devious or a trickster or whatever that they can gain. And they might gain a momentary admiration from people who are looking up to them for that activity. But in the long run, deep down inside, they know that that's not an honorable thing, and they don't have honor. They don't feel honor. They feel dishonor because of the way that they've behaved. And it says in verse 34, now let's concentrate on that verse for a minute. It says, though he scoffs at the scoffers, yet he gives grace to the afflicted. Now, we've talked about grace, and we know that grace is when you receive something from God that you did not deserve. And so that's what this verse is saying as far as the afflicted person, the person who is downtrodden. God gives grace to them. He gives them something that they don't deserve. He gives them blessings, and he lifts them up. But he scoffs at the scoffers. And when I think of a scoffer, I think of someone who mocks God or turns their nose up at God. A scoffer, I tried to sit down and just really think this through. What is a scoffer? A person who chooses to deliberately do the wrong thing. Maybe they know what God wants them to do, or they know what is the honorable thing to do, but they sort of thumb their nose at God and say, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it my way. And it says God scoffs at the scoffers. In other words, he turns his nose up at them. He deliberately chooses not to bless those people because they are mocking him to his face by the actions that they choose. And I tried to think about, why would a person do that? Why would a person, whether deliberately or not even realizing what they're doing, why would they scoff at God? These are some ideas that I came up with. Maybe they are angry with God. And anger, I describe anger in this way. Anger is, it comes out of an unfulfilled desire or an unfulfilled expectation. You have an expectation for something to happen in a certain way, and then it doesn't. And you become angry because that did not happen in the way that you expected. Or it did not happen, in the way you desired for it to happen. Maybe they just have a rebellious spirit, that they are just rebelling against God, because maybe God has tried to guide their hearts and they just don't want it. They are going against God. Maybe they want to hurt God in some way because they have been hurt in the past. And they're lashing back at God, like God should have done something about it, and he didn't. And I've been hurt, and so now I'm going to hurt other people, and I'm going to hurt God by mocking him or scoffing at God. Maybe they desire to see themselves in a place of honor, and they have not gotten that place of honor. Again, that would fall under an unfulfilled expectation. So for whatever the reason, a person may scoff at God. They may turn their back on God. They may openly rebel at God for whatever reason. And along that same line, I thought, if you represent God as a Christian with your testimony in the things that you do, in speaking about your Christian life or going to church and those things, then if those scoffers are out there, and they will scoff at you too. But it's not really you that they're attacking. If you can keep that in perspective, they are angry, but not necessarily at you. They're angry at God. You're just the closest thing that they can grab onto that seems associated with God in some way. And so they lash out at you. They might call you goody two-shoes. They might hate you or put you in a category without even getting to know you. They might just look at you and say, oh, they're a Christian, they go to church, and I don't want to have anything to do with them, without even taking the time to know you. They may turn around and hate other people without getting to know them. They may challenge you openly about your testimony or your beliefs. So don't be surprised if scoffers scoff at you, and try to always remember that really and truly they're scoffing at God. This is the most times I've said the word scoffing in my whole life, I think. Okay, so let's wrap it up now on this section. We said God offers peace of mind, peaceful sleep to those who trust in him, to those who are trying to follow his wisdom. We said God expects us to treat others with kindness, our neighbors, and not to devise harm against them and other things such as that. And we said God blesses those who know him. So let's think about those things this week. And when we see someone who's acting out or acting up, I always approach it this way. You cannot change another person's religion by attacking their religion. That's not the way. You'll never succeed. If someone comes to your door and they're from a cult type of group and they try to tell you about their religion and you begin to attack their religion, you're not making any headway. Not at all. The only thing that you can do is lift up Jesus, your testimony, your faith, and let Jesus change their heart. In the same way, when you see people acting up in the world and acting out in the world, that group that they are a part of, though it may not be a church, it may be an ideology, it may be a religion to that person. They may be so deep in it that it's become a religion to them. And you will not change their religion by attacking their religion. And I'm seeing a lot of Christian people who are trying to do just that. It won't work. The way for us to see a change in our world is to lift Jesus up so that others can see him and not see us. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.